Some scientific discoveries came after exhausting and targeted laboratory work aiming to achieve specific results that researchers sought to find. However, many drugs and scientific breakthroughs emerged when someone, be it a person or a scientist, stumbled upon something they were not actively searching for. Chance has played a role in some of the most famous medical discoveries in history. Viagra. Researchers initially studied this drug for treating high blood pressure and angina, with the first clinical trials conducted at Morriston Hospital in Swansea, UK. The researchers were focused on treating cardiovascular issues, as the drug was supposed to dilate blood vessels in the heart. The strange news, which would later turn into good news, came from the nurses supervising the men participating in the study. John LaMattina, who was the head of research and development at Pfizer during this research, noted that the nurses observed that when examining the men, many of them lay on their stomachs and felt embarrassed because they experienced erections. It turned out that the dilated blood vessels were not in the heart, but in the penis. And since the dilation of blood vessels is a crucial part of the process leading to an erection, the result was astonishing. Pfizer decided to market this drug for treating erectile dysfunction rather than for angina. They filed a patent in 1996, and it was approved for use in treating erectile dysfunction by the US Food and Drug Administration on March 27, 1998, making it the first oral treatment for erectile dysfunction in the United States. Viagra became one of the greatest successes in the history of the pharmaceutical industry, with its annual sales reaching $1.934 billion in 2008. Since 2012, the United States, Mexico, and Canada have spent about $1.4 billion annually. Penicillin. The world-renowned Alexander Fleming did not know that the price he would pay for his negligence and lack of cleanliness in his laboratory in Scotland would be extremely high, perhaps the most valuable of all, as it is considered one of the most important discoveries of the 20th century. In 1927, Alexander Fleming was studying the properties of bacteria and had planned to go on vacation with his family. With his known tendency for laziness, he carelessly placed all his bacterial cultures to the side of his laboratory, only to return after a month of vacation and be surprised to find mold growing on one of the cultures. Upon examining it under the microscope, he discovered that the mold had the ability to stop the growth of the bacteria. Several days later, penicillin was announced as the first antibiotic in history capable of eradicating bacteria. Valium. The benzodiazepine, one of the treatments for mental disorders, was developed in 1950 by a Polish immigrant in the United States named Leo Sternbach, from a number of chemical compounds he had synthesized 20 years earlier in Poland while conducting some experiments to create new dyes. Although the man failed to create the dyes he had intended, benzodiazepine and Valium, one of the most prominent treatments derived from it, quickly became some of the most popular medications in the United States. In 1895, a German doctor named Wilhelm Röntgen was working with a tube that contained cathode rays. Despite the fact that the tube was discovered, he found that a fluorescent screen began to glow when the tube was active and the room was dark, and the rays illuminated the screen in some way. Röntgen tried to block the rays, but nothing changed for most objects placed in front of it. When he placed his hand in front of the tube, Röntgen discovered that he could see his bones in the image displayed on the screen, so he replaced the tube with a photographic plate to capture images, thus creating the first X-ray. This technique was later adopted by medical institutions and research departments, but unfortunately it took scientists some time to grasp its dangers. Wilson Greatbatch, an assistant professor of engineering at the University of Buffalo, accidentally invented the pacemaker in 1956. While working on construction equipment intended to record heart sounds, the scientist used the wrong transistor and discovered that instead of recording sounds, his device emitted an electrical pulse that mimicked a heartbeat. Greatbatch presented his invention to William Chardak, a surgeon at the Veterans Administration Hospital in Buffalo, and together they successfully controlled human heartbeats in 1960. Warfarin, a common blood thinner, was not discovered in a laboratory but in a field where cattle were dying from a mysterious disease. Cattle and sheep grazing on spoiled sweet clover hay in 1920 suffered from internal bleeding, and even healthy animals bled to death from simple veterinary procedures. Canadian veterinarian Frank Schofield announced that the spoiled hay contained an anticoagulant that prevented blood from clotting. In 1940, biochemist Carl Link led a team of scientists from the University of Wisconsin to isolate the anticoagulant compound in the spoiled hay, and a patent was registered for the compound under the name warfarin, in honor of the Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation, WARF, that funded its development. In the end, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.